What is up, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be going over how you can get the Patrick Mahomes skin for free in his Zero Build Squad tournament. If you guys do enjoy this video or find it helpful or informative, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more, comment down below what you think of the skin and if you're excited for the collab, and let's get right into the video. So for starters, you're going to want to go to your Compete tab and view the Patrick Mahomes Cup. This takes place on August 23rd, but depending on your region, the time may change. So for me, it's 6 p.m. Eastern time to 9 p.m. Eastern time. But if you're playing on Europe or NA West or any of the other regions, odds are the time may be different for you. So make sure you check the Compete tab and see when it is taking place and what placement you need to actually end up getting the skin, because this changes from region to region, just typically based on how many people play in the cups. So that is important information, obviously. And one thing I think a lot of people forget when it comes to tournaments, or one thing that I feel like people put too much emphasis on, is they feel like since it's a tournament, they need to play like overly passive and just try to make it endgame. And then because of that, they end up putting themselves in a lot of bad situations, and they're not really like fighting back in a lot of fights because they're just trying to get away from it. And then on the flip side, a lot of people think like, oh, I just need to W key everything and just get as many kills to get a lot of kill points. And I feel like typically in tournaments, it's kind of best to do some sort of middle ground. In my personal opinion, it's best to just make it to endgame and then try to get kills there. Obviously, you have to get kills off spawn if people land at the same place as you. But I feel like as long as you are able to make it endgame, you're going to be able to pick up kills endgame, because oftentimes that is the most populated point in the game. And you're going to be able to get a lot of easy kills at that point. And obviously, you're going to get the placement points. If you get too over confident and you just get in too many fights W king and you end up dying, you lost all potential to gain points in that match. Whereas the longer you live, the better positions you put yourself in, and the more you set yourself up to actually win the game and capitalize on in-game chaos to an extent, the better you're going to do, I think, personally. So I wouldn't worry too much about trying to do overly passive playstyle or too aggressive playstyle. Just try to do somewhat in the middle, put yourself in the right spots, try to make it to endgame, and try to be able to get a positioning that you can capitalize endgame and actually end up picking up a lot of kills. Because Zero Build endgame, if there's a decent amount of players left alive, since it is Zero Build and people can't build, you can pick up so many kills just rapidly. And since it is squads, I think you're going to want to land at a POI with a good amount of loot. Typically for tournaments, especially in solo tournaments or duo tournaments, you can really make some smaller areas or lesser known locations or just more shambles loot paths. You can make those work quite fine. But I feel like for squads, getting 4 people's worth of loot is probably going to be a struggle. So I probably would recommend landing at a named POI or just at a landmark with a decent amount of loot. Things like Sunny Steps, for example, that's not a named POI, but there's a lot of loot there. The reality area outside Greasy, which has Dusty and the big chair, not necessarily a named location, but there's a good amount of loot there. I would try to land somewhere where you can get a decent amount of loot, and odds are there's probably going to be a decent amount of people landing in a POI since it is squads. And if you are good at fighting a POI with your team, that can be a lot of easy early game kills for you. Just keep in mind, if you're going to a POI that's hot, obviously, it's more risky. It's going to come down to more spawn RNG, and it does make rotating harder as you're going to have to invest more time into fighting off spawn. When it comes to Zero Build competitive, rifts and rift-to-goes and portaforts are so crucial. The more of these that you have, the more likely it is that you will do well. I said before that the Zero Build endgame is really chaotic because people can't build, and the teams with portaforts are the teams that are able to survive. And even if you throw your portafort down and then just sit in the bottom of it, this can be an effective way to just last for a zone or two. And if you have several portaforts and several rifts, you could basically do this for every zone, where you just rift, go somewhere in zone, put your portafort down, chill in the bottom as to not draw attention to yourself and not really start fights. When the next zone closes, rift again, go set up another portafort immediately, and then just chill. And this is something I've seen a lot of players do in stacked Zero Build competitive tournaments, and it works out quite well. You would think that you want to use your portafort and set up top, and you can do that, but sometimes the game can just get so chaotic that while you're focusing one team, another team or another few teams ends up focusing you. So depending on how many people are left alive, just not really taking part in a fight and not using your heals and not wasting more of your portaforts might be the best play. It really, everything is situational, but keep that in mind as a play you can kind of make with the rift to go portafort, just getting in a zone and then immediately throwing your portafort down and then kind of chilling. Cow catchers can be helpful as well, but they're not as good as portaforts, and they don't protect you from as many different angles. And with this being squads, I expect the end games to be really, really, really chaotic. We'll see how it goes, but I expect them to be pretty chaotic. Off spawn, you're going to want to make sure you loot as much of your POI as possible. Like I said, you want those rift goes, you want those portaforts. Ammo is so crucial in zero build mode, especially with the portaforts. It often can be helpful to have a person on your team, or maybe 2 people, since it's squads, carry heavy snipers, just to knock out the portaforts. A lot of people do this incorrectly, though. If you are the player with a heavy snipe and you want to grief the portafort, you want to shoot the top ramps and cones. That way those players can't really use it against you anymore. A lot of people make the mistake of shooting out the bottom because they want to completely destroy it, and that can work, but it takes 2 heavy sniper shots to destroy the walls, where it only takes 1 to destroy the ramp. So in 3 shots of the heavy sniper, if you have a portafort kind of looking at you, you can completely destroy all their cover that they would have facing you, and it really disincentivizes them to shoot at you, and it really griefs you. Whereas like if you put those 3 shots in the walls, you would destroy 1.5 wall, and they still have cover on their ramps, and they really can't. They could still just fry you. So if you are the player with heavy snipe, make sure you're shooting the ramps and the cones at the top of the portafort. You're going to want to get as much ammo as possible. Like I said, zero build ammo is super important, and you're going to be like, the more players that have ammo in your team, the better, because when it comes to endgame, you're probably going to be throwing out AUG shots almost constantly, and everybody is going to eventually run dry on ammo. Gold can also be super important. Since it's a tournament, your gold resets every game down to 0. And so if you get into a situation where you need to buy ammo from a vending machine, that's another thing. If there's vendings at your POI, make sure you buy ammo if you're not going to like use your gold later on. You can also buy heals, which is pretty helpful. And you mostly get gold just from looting, but you can also get it from pickaxing the couches and beds and POIs. I feel like this is something that not a lot of zero build players know, because like, why would they farm mats in zero build? But if you break the couches or the beds, you get gold, and that gold can be really helpful because ammo is super important, and heals are also going to be super important since it is squads. Just needing 4 people worth of loot can be a struggle sometimes. My ideal loadout for zero build tournaments is going to be the AUG, the Stinger SMG, whatever heals I can get, hopefully chug splashes, but if not, mini shields are quite good as well. It might also be worth having somebody on your team carry shield kegs, just because it is squad, so being able to put that down and heal everybody is quite nice. And then rift gun portafort. So I think it's best to only use 2 guns, and in pubs, I often use the shotgun because we're going to be playing really aggressive and just trying to get in as many fights as possible. But for the tournaments, I like just running AR SMG, and that's what I've done for pretty much every zero build tournament I've done. And that's what I've seen a lot of other players doing as well, because a lot of your fights are going to be more mid to long range and not as much of just like getting in people's face and fighting them. But if you want to use a shotgun, that's fine. This is just my personal preference. Like I said, AUG, SMG, Rift to go, portafort, and then whatever healing item. Odds are you're not going to get enough Rift-to-Goes and portaforts for everybody on your team to be carrying them, and that's where something like the heavy sniper or the cow catchers could come in and be quite helpful. That heavy sniper is really valuable. Also, the Kamehameha would be really good for griefing the portaforts in-game, but I don't think they will be in this tournament. Usually those aren't in competitive, but the tournament hasn't happened yet, so we'll have to see how it goes. When you're playing this game, try to stick with your teammates as much as possible. Whenever you get split and one player gets knocked, that is just far and away the easiest way to lose a fight. And if you are, on the flip side, if you're fighting a team, try to pick the straggler first and just get a knock, because that makes it so much easier for your team to play a 4v3. You can quickly translate that into a 4v2 and then a 4v1. Like, the less numbers the enemy team has, the less damage they can put back on you, and just the faster you can wipe that team. So I think it's actually quite beneficial to have your teammates like focus the same skin. If you're fighting a team, and the team is using different skins, call which skin you're focusing and try to like melt them down and just get that numbers advantage as fast as you can. Or if you see a straggler, like I said, try to pick them, and you want to just stick with your squad as much as possible, because if you're the lone man, that's when people are going to fry you, and that's when you're going to get knocked, and that's when you're just going to make the fight so much harder for your team than the enemy team. And with it being squads, the third party potential is like pretty problematic. That was why I was saying I don't think it's best to just play this really W key centric unless you're in a really easy lobby for whatever reason. It's going to take a while to end a 4v4 fight, you know? And with it being a tournament, everybody is probably going to be trying to do their best. And if you're fighting another squad and another team is somewhat nearby, they're going to want to third party that. So the more you fight, the more likely it is you get third partied. And since it's squads, the odds of fights going longer are more likely than if it was just solos or duos. So keep that in mind whenever you're fighting. You just want to avoid getting third-partied. It's really tough to deal with third parties in Zero Build, but it's even more tough to deal with them in like Zero Build squads, just because if you're fighting a team and another team pulls up, that's 12 people. Like that is so much. That is so much going on. And if you do feel like you're overperforming in this tournament, let's say you get on and you pop off in your first game, it might be somewhat beneficial for you to take a break, because the way these tournaments work, the more points you have, it matches you against people that have similar points. So the better you do in the tournament, the harder the matches you get. So if you have one like anomaly, like huge pop off game, sometimes it can be beneficial to take a break. That way you let more people catch up, but you're not using your games in the time that they catch up, so you're less likely to run out of matches. That is something to be considered. Maybe even starting a bit late if you are, you know, not very confident. Starting like 20-30 minutes late could be the trick and could help you get an easier first match and get like a huge chunk of points in that first game, because with these tournaments you only have 10 games to play. So the most, like, you want to maximize the amount of points you can get out of each game. And that's going to be it for this video. If you guys want to see more tips about Zero Build competitive, I have a video where I spectated my friend in Zero Build Twitch Rivals, and they ended up placing top 5 in a really stacked tournament. And I kind of went over a lot of Zero Build comp specific things, and we watched the Zero Build competitive games and explained what was going on and why. So if you want to see that video, it'll be linked down in the description below. And that's going to be it for this. I hope you guys end up placing well in the tournament and getting the skin. If you guys did enjoy this video, remember to give it a like, subscribe if you'd like to see more. Comment down below what you think of the skin, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.